Welcome back to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Legalpreneurs Spotlight Future 50 series. We're showcasing thought leaders and doers in legal innovation and legal tech around the world. Absolutely delighted today to be joined by Electra, and we're going to chat with her in just a little minute. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her first. Electra is a serial entrepreneur. We, of course, like to call folks working in legal that are entrepreneurs legalpreneurs. So you're an honorary legalpreneur now, Electra. I hope that's okay. She's worked in legal in in-house roles and consultancies in Europe and the UK. Electra established her own strategic legal ops and design consultancy with the Law Boutique back in 2017 and is the co-founder of oneNDA, Clause Stack and oneDPA. We're going to talk about all of those things with her today, so we'll make sure that you hear about them all. Electra, it's really wonderful to welcome you to Future 50. I want to also say at the very outset, huge congrats on everything that you've been doing, especially oneNDA and oneDPA. And I believe with oneDPA, we often have to say, woohoo, it's now officially launched, right? So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Absolute pleasure. I wanted to kind of work through all of these many things that you've got going on, I guess, one at a time. And I guess to start with oneNDA, and the way that it's been described that I saw, and I'm going to fact check this with you in just a sec, is that it's an open source standard form non-disclosure agreement created by the legal community for the legal and business communities. How does that sit as a description with you?
Perfect. That's spot on. That's exactly what it
is. So tell us a bit about it. Like, why did you create it, I guess, in the first place? And how did you get the whole thing going?
Yeah, so as you said earlier, I'm the founder of TLB, which is a legal operations and design consultancy. And as part of our offering, we work with in-house legal teams and act as an extension to theirs. And we did a review of the contracts that we'd looked at over the course of 2020, which was a huge growth year for us because of the pandemic. People weren't hiring, but they needed interim support. So they came to us, and at the end of the year, we looked at all the contracts we'd reviewed, and we found out that 63% of the agreements we'd looked at were NDAs, but that only accounted for 7% of our revenue, which is insane. And I was talking to Roisin, our COO, over a weekend, and I just said, you know, we exist to streamline the way in-house legal works, and it feels like we're perpetuating the problem here because we're just reviewing the contracts and not doing anything about it. And now we've seen the volumes, you can't unsee that. So I just went on LinkedIn and I said, why have we got really expensive people, lawyers, reviewing contracts that are really boring, no one cares about, they never get litigated, the ROI is next to zero, this makes no sense. Why don't we just all agree on oneNDA as our standard form? Next time you enter into negotiation with a third party around whether or not you want to, you know, a commercial partnership, a potential commercial partnership, instead of having the battle of the forms, we've all agreed to oneNDA. And the response to that post was phenomenal. It had 35,000 views. And literally hundreds of messages from lawyers around the world saying, do it, we'll support it. So I thought, I've hit a nerve here. Other people can see how insane this is. Just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean that it should be done that way. So I set up a website over a weekend on Squarespace, and I just said to people, look, if I can get 100 people to sign up over the next 2 weeks, we'll spearhead this initiative. And we hit that number 12 hours from launch.
Wow.
So clearly people wanted it, and we had to spearhead it because we said we would. And then we said, I thought about it a lot. You know, I've seen other initiatives where people have tried to create standard forms or at least some sort of market consensus. And I didn't think they were that successful. And I think the reason they weren't that successful is because they didn't really consider people's buy-in from the outset. Lawyers are a special breed. If you give them form, they get the red pen out and start correcting it. And I didn't want that to happen. So I wanted it to be a crowdsourced document. So the way we approached it was to take an NDA that was given to us by the World Commerce and Contracting, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to making contracting better. They had an NDA that they'd created, having reviewed 2,000 NDAs with AI and NLP. And they put together a 5-page NDA that included all the provisions that were ever found in any NDA. But that was too long. So we took the provisions and we broke them out into principles, because so in my head, as a lawyer, what you do when you're reviewing a contract is 2 things simultaneously. In the first instance, you're assessing the principle of the clause. And in the second instance, you're assessing the drafting. And often the 2 are conflated, and it creates prolonged negotiations over things that don't really matter. So I wanted to decouple the 2. And so we took the principles at high level, and we put them together on a board. And then we put together a steering committee, which comprised of lawyers from in-house teams around the world, from really prominent organizations, including Google, AstraZeneca. We had EasyJet, Diageo, you name it, they were on the board. And then we also had in-house lawyers and law firm lawyers as well, from smaller organizations and also really prominent law firms, including Gilbert and Tobin in Australia. And together we looked at those principles, and we agreed what needs to go in and what needs to come out. So even principles that you're really used to seeing in NDAs, this is the time to critically assess whether it's sensible to have them there. So really taking a fresh approach to it. So we agreed which principles should go in, and then we asked the law firms to draft the language, which then became version 0 rather. We then put that out to the public for consultation. We had input from 1,200 lawyers. We then took that back. We had 28 pages of comments. We iterated on the document, incorporated the comments, gave it back to the steering committee, final review, and then we issued it as version 1. And we took a very product approach to it. So we said, look, this is the document. We know it's not perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's an NDA. And also, I challenge anyone to give me a perfect legal document. So we're going to put this out for public review and use. And if you have any snags, bugs, pushbacks, tell us. So we opened up a feedback form, and we got people to give us their feedback, which we did. We collected feedback for 6 months. And then in March this year, we issued it as version 2 with fixes. So that's the story of oneNDA. It's been extremely successful. We have nearly 700 organizations that have adopted it.
Terrific.
Including some at global scale like Novartis. We've got Panasonic, Swiss Re, EasyJet, and these companies are all using it and are reporting that it's really working. So it's a live product, and we're iterating on it as we go along, but it makes sense for commoditized agreements. I just think it makes sense to go for standardization.
So let me pull out a few bits of that. Am I right in saying that first LinkedIn post was in about January 2021?
Yeah.
And then from then until you issued a version for open for comment, what sort of time period did you have between those 2 things?
So oneNDA took about 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, took about 6 months.
Yeah.
Which is a long time, but also not that long considering the impact.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's short actually in terms of timing, and that many lawyers also consulting on it. Do you think there was, because it sounds like a big piece of this, of course, was the output of the document, but the collaboration part of it as well sounds like it was a really big piece, and bringing lawyers from all iterations of where they might be practicing law a big part as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably half the battle is the collaboration, because it doesn't, as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter whether it's a perfect document or not. At the end of the day, it's really hard to create a perfect document, and what's perfect for one side isn't for the other. This is a balanced document, and we all put it together. And the point is, let's all agree to agree on one NDA. It's not let's create the perfect legal document.
Yeah.
So collaboration is key to this initiative, and the market consensus is what makes this special. It's not the form itself.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does also lend itself, by the sounds of it, to automation. So it does lend itself to being able to be used in those self-service kiosks that are becoming increasingly popular, and obviously increasing in incidence as well. That's right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So when we did the initiative, we polled the community a lot because we wanted to ask questions about how NDAs were used in people's organizations. And 75% of our respondents said that NDAs are a self-serve document that's utilized predominantly by the business. So that means people without a legal background. So the document needed to be written in plain English and in a way that anyone can understand. But also, because it's self-serve, that meant that it was going to be automated. So the way we created the form was so that it could be digitized really easily. So we split out the variables. Those are at the top, and then you've got your non-negotiable boilerplate language at the bottom. So yeah, digitization and automation were part of the initiative from the outset.
Fantastic. And maybe even in a way helping to establish those self-service kiosks in all of those places as well. Let me jump ahead a little bit because I want to chat also about clause stack and oneDPA. And I guess in terms of when those things happen, clause stack is probably the next one. Tell us a bit about that, like how it came to being and its relationship to the other stuff that you've been working on.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, we had 100 people sign up to the oneNDA initiative within 12 hours from launch. But by the end of the 6 months, we had 10,000 lawyers across the world who had signed up.
Wow.
In one way or another participated in the project. And we thought, we've created this audience, but it's an audience. It's not really a community that can collaborate with each other. It's up to us to facilitate those conversations. So what if we all work together? What if we created a space for lawyers to come together and collaborate on more than just the projects that we initiate? What if we gave people a space and a platform to initiate their own projects, share knowledge, share templates, ask questions, work with each other? Because in the legal industry, we don't really do that. We're not like software developers who have things like Stack Overflow and GitHub. We're very siloed and in fact, contractual language and other know-how, which in other industries, you expect to find information for free now on the internet. With us, it's all paywalled and considered the intellectual property of the law firms and the legal techs. But it's kind of old school to think that that should be the way. And I think that in the future, considering the fact that in 5 years, 75% of the workforce will be millennials, these millennials aren't used to paying for information, and if we all come together to collaborate, law will be so much more efficient because of that problem that you've got that you think is new. 1,000 lawyers have solved before you. So if we all come together to share that knowledge, we would really accelerate our profession, which quite frankly is stuck in the dark ages compared to some other.
Absolutely.
That was why clause stack was created, to create that space for lawyers to come together and collaborate.
And I guess that, it's powerful in and of itself, but it must be particularly powerful for solo practitioners or in-house teams of one to be able to actually have the opportunity to meet in a space and collaborate in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you're in a law firm with 900 other lawyers, you have a network and you have know-how and you've got money to go and buy Thomson Reuters PLC to download templates. But if you're a solo practitioner, which I was when I first started, and it's really, really expensive to innovate in the space of law because access to stuff that's reliable is really, really expensive. So it's hard to innovate and it's hard to set up something by yourself because there's no access, there's no democratization of contracts and law and knowledge.
Absolutely. So tell us now a bit about oneDPA. I guess you got the systems and processes all under control and working, with oneNDA. So tell us about oneDPA.
So oneDPA was the next one. Firstly, I'm a data protection lawyer by background, so I hate DPAs because I've spent so much of my time doing them. And they're, in my view, they are so perfect for standardization because most of the content is driven by regulation and case law. Plus, you've got the model clauses that are provided by the European Union. So why, they're standard, why isn't the rest standard? I don't get it. So I've always thought this is great as a next step. Then we polled the community and we said, what do you want to see next? And 53% of respondents said DPA. So we thought, great, there's appetite for this. So OneNDA took 6 months. We wanted to deliver OneDPA in 6 weeks, which we
Wow.
achieved.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah, we achieved it. And the way we did it was by using clause stack. So OneNDA was totally manual. We were winging it. We were trying to make it up as we went along.
Yeah.
And then we did a big retro at the end of the project. And we said, right, let's write down all the steps that we took. And there were, I mean, tens and tens and tens of steps that we'd taken.
Yeah.
And every email and every communication took effort and time and multiple ways of communicating with our audience. So we decided to digitize the process and make it less manual by using clause stack as a platform. And we also learned some lessons from OneNDA about steps that weren't necessary and we didn't want to. So we really leaned out the process and we delivered it. And also OneDPA is a much bigger project because it's not just one 2-page document, it's a suite of documents. So for anyone who wants to check it out, go to clause stack and there's in the library, you'll find OneDPA and you can see the suite of documents that we've put together, and there's still more to come.
As you've been going along, have you noticeably seen that more people are joining the community? Because I suppose you started with a base, and I'm assuming because the nature of your agreements are changing and growing and maybe touching different places within the industry where it's needed, that the community would grow as well. But has that been happening?
I think it has been happening. It's really hard to get data in terms of the forms usage because we're not using any tech.
Yeah.
So someone might download it, but you don't know if they've used it. Someone might adopt it, but you don't know if they've used it. Or someone might use it, but they haven't told you. So it's really hard to collate the data. And I'm constantly thinking, how do you measure success? Which is, I wrote a piece about it and got lots of people giving their input. And there is no perfect answer, is the conclusion. But in terms of the community growing, absolutely. And I think there's huge appetite, not just for standardization and better ways of working, but for peer-to-peer collaboration, where we together are empowered to just make our jobs better and easier. So yes, we've seen it grow. As I said, we've got 10,000 people already part of the OneNDA community. And clause stack's got nearly 2,000 people already, and it only launched in April.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
But that's your measure, and surely one of your metrics is the fact that you've turned 6 months into 6 weeks. I don't know if the next challenge is 6 days. That may be way too ambitious, but
yeah, I think 6 weeks is the minimum. You win some and you lose some by creating a shorter process. You've got time to create buy-in, which is what this is all about. Whereas OneNDA was people were low-key obsessed with it. People were they were really, really into it. With OneDPA, we haven't had time to get people. Some people don't even know about it yet because it's only been 6 weeks.
Sure. So
there's pros and cons. So I think maybe next time we'll do it in 8 weeks just to make it a bit more comfortable.
But as you say, the first time round you were creating the whole thing as you went, and I suppose as you say, you've learned from that. But I wonder if in doing all of this, what you're also creating is, and it touches on something you said earlier, kind of an even larger movement into how we go about standardizing documents generally, and also a focus and interest, as you've already alluded to, on the standardization of documents, but created in this way, because the whole process is very collaborative. It's obviously open source, it's free, it's global. Do you feel that beyond the documents that have actually been created, you're seeing a noticeable shift into people wanting to do things a different way?
Yeah, definitely. I think post-pandemic, people have had realizations around what they've been doing because there've been no other distractions. It's all been about the work. And I think that OneNDA came at the right time. I think had we done OneNDA 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been as successful.
Yeah.
So yes, people are looking for better ways of working. I think that it's quite clear that collaborating with peers is a big part of the way forward. So I am seeing a move towards an openness in our community. And I think it just needs more people need to trust more and open up more. So at the moment, Clause Stack contains only one main feature, which is the ability to collaborate on projects and to download standard templates. But over the next month or so, we're going to be releasing 2 more features. One of them is a Q&A feature where lawyers can go and ask questions and peers can respond. So you don't always have to go to the law firm. Yep. You can just ask. And also some stuff isn't law firm worthy. It's what's your COVID sickness policy? You know, how do you deal with X scenario when you're trying to pull your business from the UK to the US? So it's know-how, it's operations, it's process. So this sort of thing, there is no real knowledge base for. So we want to create a Q&A feature. And the next feature is we're going to ask people to share templates that they have. And then we're going to try and start to measure their use. And then on that basis, when something's been used a lot, we can then say that this is a market standard. So you don't necessarily have to go through the process that we went through each and every time. And this is all experimental. We'll see if it works. But I think that if we can create a safe space for lawyers to come and share, that can be quite transformative.
Oh, absolutely. I think in terms of sharing that knowledge and information is going to be incredibly powerful, much less the product that's actually produced. I do think that opportunity to collaborate is just going to be huge and continue to grow. Look, what you've done is, as I've said, absolutely amazing. Congratulations again. Just so delighted that you could spend the time with us and chat about it. And I really look forward to coming back and checking in again in another 8 weeks to see what standardisation you've achieved within that time. I joke, but I can't imagine that it's likely to stop here anytime soon, and it's going to continue to blossom and grow. And again, huge congrats on it, and thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.